Alright guys, here's my video on how I make videos. I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, but I'm going to try to cover everything that I can think of too. I am winging it. I've been planning something like this for a while, but the more planning I do, the more and more complicated it gets. So I just decided to wing it. So if you do have any questions after this, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best I can. Alright, so there's my drums, which you've already seen if you've watched any of my videos. Alesis Strike Pro SE. Pretty much bone stock with the exception of the one added cymbal. If anybody needs anything about how to add a cymbal or a tom pad or anything, I could do a separate video on that. Here's the room. I'm standing almost against the back wall. I'm right in front of my desk. You can see I'm in a really small space here. I'm going to try to go all the way around, and I'm having to move. So much. You see, it's pretty tiny in here. Pretty tiny. Very brown over there. The whole room would be very brown, which is part of the reason I have the curtains you'll see up on the wall. I'm going to go over what everything is and everything that I use, and try to not leave no stone unturned. You can see my camera there, one of them. I use GoPros. I use nothing but GoPros. These are Hero 5 Blacks. Ignore the fact that case says Black 7. It's really a Hero 5 Black. You can see that yellow thing. I'm going to explain what those are in a few minutes as well. There is my, if I can get it so I'm not pointing it directly in the light. That's my overhead camera, which you can see is just on a boom stand directly behind where I'm sitting. Have another one over there. I use 4 total, so that's 3. I've got a left shoulder, right shoulder, overhead, and then one more way down here for the kick drum. You can see it over there on the other side of that light. I started off with 2 GoPros and one kind of I don't know what they're called, almost like a DSLR, but you can't change lenses. Anyways, I didn't get the same picture quality from all of them, didn't get the same color and white balance from all of them. And I'm not somebody who wants to fiddle around with color and white balance. I'm colorblind. I can see colors, but not all of them. And so the last thing I need to do is try to adjust color. But I can see when one camera looks different from another, and that was frustrating. So rather than fiddle around with making multiple cameras look the same, I just decided to buy more GoPros. And honestly, for the cost of the 4 GoPros, I bought all of them. I had 2 already that I had bought as refurbs on eBay, and I bought 2 more as refurbs on eBay, and all 4 of them together cost less, way less than a new DSLR, probably cheaper than any recent used DSLR. Of course, the thing about GoPros is there's a million different kinds of mounts you can use for clamping to just about anything, but none of them really worked for me. I've got bags of mounts for GoPros that I'm just not happy with, and I really wanted something that I felt was more flexible. And to me, ideally, the best flexibility, especially when there's nothing else around me and I have the room to play with, was boom stands. But if you've ever looked at a camera boom stand, the things cost a fortune, right? Over $100 easily for the cheapest ones. And then I don't know what kind of quality they are at that. And so I got thinking about it, and I figured, well, first I looked at cymbal stands. If you have old boom cymbal stands, some of the older ones have a quarter 20 thread. That's a 1/4 inch diameter thread with 20 threads per inch if you're looking for one in a store. Some of the old cymbal stands use 1/4 20 threads for the wing nut screws. So I actually had some in storage, and I pulled a couple out, and it did work, but it still didn't make me happy. But if you have some older mic stands, you might be able to screw them directly into the bottom of if you've got one of these tripod adapters like this is. It's not a great shot of one. Let me see. Well, this one's red. It'll show up better. Right, so these tripod adapters, these are aluminum ones. You can get plastic ones, and they're a whole lot cheaper. I overpaid and bought the aluminum and kind of wish that I hadn't. But anyways, those have a 1/4 20 screw hole in the bottom of them. So you can use those and maybe use an old cymbal stand. I just decided, hey, they're lighter than a lot of microphones. Maybe a microphone stand will work. I had some microphone booms laying around from doing acoustic drum work and microphoning. So I bought some of the clips, like you see, the clip stand, the clip mic holders, right? So I bought several of these, and I made the yellow pieces. I'd call it an adapter, but that gives it more credit than it's due. It's a piece of plastic that, if you could see in that hole, there is a 1/4 inch 20 bolt up through here screwed into the bottom of that, and that's pretty much it. It's lightweight enough and small enough that I can just clip them. I can't do it one-handed, but I can just clip these into place, and then I can rotate them, I can tilt, I can do whatever and get the camera kind of positioned exactly where I want it, right? So that's worked pretty well. I've got that same setup on all the cameras, my right side camera, left side camera, left side camera, overhead camera, and the kit camera. This was just a kick drum mic boom stand, one of these little small booms for putting a mic inside a bass drum or right up against the front head. I already had one of this, a Gibraltar, just like a multi-clamp. I mounted my light. I have a set of lights. I bought a set of these. Turn this one off so I can show you the front of it. I bought a set of these small LED lights. It was 3 to a set, and I think I probably paid $40 for the set of them. That's what I started out with lighting. None of the videos that I've put on YouTube use these. They just didn't get bright enough. They had to be so close that they were in the camera shot, and it didn't work out. But for my kick drum light, using one of these works great. It has a 1/4 20 hole in the bottom of it, just like you would have on on the bottom of your camera adapter, so you could put it on a camera tripod. It was supposed to be a photo or video light. I made some more of those plastic things, mounted one to the bottom of this, mounted it with my clip, and then I have the power cord tied off back here so I can just switch it on. It stays there pointed at the kick drum. It never moves. My kick drum camera mount stays right there. It never moves. I have to put the camera in every time I get ready, and I have to get down there and look at it to see if it's lined up right, but it does kind of streamline the process a little bit. Let's see if I can show my camera settings. Because I keep the settings set exactly the same on all 4 of my GoPros. All right, so, all right, my cell phone does not want to focus on this. Anyways, I will just tell you that my resolution set's 1080, my FPS is 24, field of view is wide. I use the Pro Tune. The color I leave set to GoPro color. People that know what they're doing with the camera will tell you not to do that. I let it color adjust on its own. White balance is set to auto, but that does mean that I have to adjust. It's part of the reason I have the black curtains around the room. I do have to control what the camera sees so that it white balances the way that I want. ISO is 400, shutter speed is 124. No EV comp. Low sharpness, audio is off. And I believe that's it. No video stabilization because the cameras aren't going to move that much. I don't really need it. Auto low light, don't need that either. Come on. And then manual audio controls. I'm not using the audio off the camera, so it really doesn't matter. My setup, I'm using the rack that came with the drums. Nothing has really changed. Everything that I'm using is stuff that came with the Strike Pro kit. I do like 3 up, 1 down. 3 toms in front and a floor tom, better than 2 mounted toms and 2 floor toms. So the rack bar on the right side used to be a long rack bar on both sides and a short one in the middle. I put the short one on the right side and put the long one, if I can get a good shot there, put the long one across the front so that I could mount the 3 mounted toms in the front. And the ride, the extra crash, which I use for a China most of the time, and my floor tom are mounted on the right. Could have swapped with the left side bar. The only reason I didn't is that I like to keep the module kind of back out of my way on the left side. So could have done it either way, I guess. So I'm going to talk for a second about my curtains. They're not actually curtains. Sorry for pointing you at the light. They're not actually curtains. They're bed sheets. I looked for floor to ceiling length black curtains online, and unsurprisingly everything that I found was more expensive than what I was willing to pay. So I went to Walmart and I bought some of these, which this one's covered in cat fur now, but it's just twin flat sheets, right? So you don't want any with the elastic in the corners or anything. Like, you don't want a fitted sheet. The flat sheets, they're super simple. They were super cheap too. I'm pretty sure they were under $10 each. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them total. And the way I hung them was pretty simple. You can see the curtain rods up there. Those are just the absolute, if I can move it. Those are just some of those cheap curtain rods, just the absolute cheapest curtain rods that I could find. Got those at Walmart too. Got them hanging as close to the ceiling as I can, all the way around. Well, most of the way around anyways. And then the curtain sheets, they're hemmed on one end. They're just folded over and stitched closed and then stitched all the way across. So all I did was rip the stitches out of the ends of that folded over seam, and then I had a pocket running all the way through the top. So I just slid them onto those curtain rods and hung them up there. But the point of that is not just to keep down the brown. You can see this, it's an old house, and it had this wood paneling on the walls, which love it or hate it, it does not look very good on camera. And again, I like things to be simple. I don't want to adjust anything. I don't want to do anything complicated. You're going to see when I get into editing my audio and video that I like to use presets. I don't like to try to reinvent the wheel and figure out, you know, new ways to do something. I mean, that's fine and all. Sometimes it's necessary, but for the most part, if there's already a good way to do it, I'd rather do that. And so I like to use the automatic settings in my cameras, and I like to let them set the white balance. I like to let them set the color. But like I said, I have to control what the camera sees. So I was really unhappy. My first few videos that I'd never put on YouTube didn't have these curtains, and everything was so brown. Like I said, I wasn't happy with the cameras themselves, and it just really, really wasn't appealing, which is why they never showed up on YouTube. So one of my first steps was to black everything out, and putting these curtains up not only made a big difference in the way my videos look. They still needed some help from lighting, but it did make a difference in how my videos look. But it also made a big difference in the sound of the room, and because this is where I also do my mix. I'm not going to say it's the perfect acoustical environment for mixing, but it is pretty dead, where it wasn't before, with hard paneling on the walls. And without doing a whole lot of other treatment to the room, this actually seems to work pretty well. My ceiling is still untreated. Everything's fine. Everything is original. Everything's the way the room was before. I could take these curtain rods down at any time and the room would go back to original. I didn't have to do any major home renovations or anything to get them up there. But it works really great. The one thing that's made the most impact on my videos from my first videos, which weren't that long ago, I just started my YouTube channel, 6 months ago. But from the first videos that I put up to the videos that I have up now, the biggest difference has really been more lighting than anything, more than the cameras, more than the curtains, more than anything. I'm sure the curtains help, but the biggest difference has been lighting. This little panel LED light down here, I started with 3 of those as a set and was going to use those and try them, and they just didn't work out for me. They didn't get bright enough. A good buddy of mine just happened to be sitting on a pair of these Smith Victor photo light fixtures with the tripods. And he was actually using them for work lights at the time, and I saw them and knew what they were, and being a good buddy of mine, he's let me borrow them, so I'm still holding on to them. I'm still using them, but they do work out great. Now, when I got them, you'll notice a difference in my videos. My earlier ones using those, everything was pretty bright. Right, my heads, you couldn't read the Alesis on them. They were pretty washed out. You could see the curtains really well. It didn't just black out the room, it just lit up the curtains. Like, you can see the curtains pretty well now, because of the camera that I'm using my cell phone to do all this. When I first got these fixtures from him, they worked fine. The only problem was, and I don't guess it's truly a problem, but they came with these 500 watt photo flood bulbs. With a really short lifespan, but they're just incandescent 500 watt light fixtures, and they get everything really bright, and they get everything super duper hot, including the top of my head when they're pointed down at me from above. So pretty rough, right? And I made a few videos with them and kept tweaking the cameras. I always thought, well, I'm using photo lights, it should look good, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get the image I was looking for. So I was really looking for something that was dark but clean. That's what I wanted. I wanted it to be dark, maybe not dark, high contrast. I wanted the blacks to be super black. I wanted it to be shadowy, but the stuff you could see, I wanted to be really clear and really sharp. Because my kick drum light is an LED, and then the light I was using for the overheads was incandescent, I couldn't get the same colors between the two. The cameras, I just couldn't make them. I couldn't make them white balance the same. Just as an experiment, doing something different, I swapped out the bulbs. Now I'm gonna try to take this out without hurting myself. Now what I'm using in these photo fixtures is a plain Jane Sylvania 5000K home LED light. It doesn't say what it is an equivalent of. I think it was a 100-watt equivalent. It might be something like a 120-watt equivalent, but I got these at Walmart. It's not a photo light. There's nothing special about it. I got a pair of them and put them in place of those really hot 500-watt lights. And not only are they cooler, but because they're also LEDs, these are LED bulbs. They look like incandescent, but they're LED bulbs. But because they're LEDs, now it's just the right amount of light to have a pair of these. It's just the right amount of light for the color balance that I want in my videos, and the white settings I want in my videos. And it all matches the LED that I use on my kick drum. So that's just really worked out. As far as setting the lights, you can see I've got them up as high as I can get them in the room, right? I've got them up almost touching the ceiling. I think that one is touching the ceiling. If you can see on that back wall there, you can see where the light is. I don't know, if I rotate this stand a little, you start to see the shadow on that symbol there, and now it's out of the shadow. It's hard to see on the camera, but in person I can see the light against the back curtain there. And I will try to, I'm rotating this fixture, right? Because the way it sits in its base, you can rotate it really easy. So I'm rotating this fixture until the light comes up just to the edge of the back of my cymbals. And just from experimentation, I've seen that if I do that, it really gives me that high contrast shadow. It kind of drums in space, I've called it before, kind of look, where you see the drums, but you really don't see the curtains. You just see black beyond that. Also, I guess on a side note, if you ever notice on any of my videos, you see these little things that look lit up. That's these straps, these little Velcro straps. I got a ton of them on Amazon. I use them to tie off all my cords. Unfortunately, they really reflect and show up well in the camera. So if you ever see little strange, looks like lights in my videos, that's what that is. Those really nice Smith Victor Photo Flood light fixtures that my buddy let me borrow are great. But they're also, if you were going to buy them, they're over $100 each, and I don't think that I would be willing to do that if it were me. But I mentioned to somebody else on in a YouTube comment, and ended up experimenting with it myself. If you've never seen these, right? These are just cheap, like shop light fixtures. You can get them at most hardware stores. It's nothing but the light fixture with some kind of clip on the back of it and a cord. It's nothing special. I've been experimenting with these, and from what I can tell, you can get about exactly the same result using those same bulbs, those household bulbs, in one of these fixtures. The problem I've had with them is that the clip that comes on them is kind of garbage, and I can't get it to hold itself up anywhere. But if you want to play, these are, I think I paid maybe 10 or 12 bucks a piece for these and got 2 of them, and get almost identical results to what I get using my fancy fixtures. So that is a good budget way to do it. If you're looking for good budget lights, honestly, if I were doing it again and had nothing to start with and I was going from scratch, I'd buy a pair of those. I'd put the same bulbs in it that I'm using now. I'd still go with the GoPros, and I'd just find some good way to mount these up. I have other lights in the room for when I'm just in here. I have a light there. I have a light over my monitor. But when I record, I shut everything off except for my 2 overhead lights. So my recording gear, this giant mixer right here, don't use it. What I do use, this top piece is just a power strip, and it was probably the cheapest one on Amazon when I got it. It just has a bunch of 110 outlets in the back. It's basically an extension cord. I don't know if it even does any surge protection or anything like that. I really don't think so. But what it is mostly is a way for me to turn things on and off without having to plug in and unplug or turn it all on and off with a power strip by itself. So a rack mount power strip basically. Just a vent. The Tascam US 1800. I've had it for a long time. I could be using it to make my videos, but I don't. I do use it as more or less the sound card for my computer though. You'll see I've got my headphones plugged in here. My reference monitors are plugged into it and I can control my levels here, but I don't actually use the inputs to record on this. I could. It's USB 2. It would probably work fine. I've tried it before and it worked okay, but honestly I like the PreSonus FP10 a little bit better. This is one of those things that people that want to use the individual line outs, which I do. I use the eight outputs on the Strike module instead of MIDI. I only use the sounds that are built into the interface. I don't use any VSTs, any MIDI, anything like that. So this is one of those things. It's an easy way in. The only downside is you have to have FireWire on your computer, and FireWire is getting to be where it's kind of obsolete. It's a lot harder to find anyway. So I did have to buy a card for my computer with FireWire on it to be able to use this, but it does work and it works great. Most of the time I keep it switched off. I'll switch it on just when I'm going to record. You'll see that I have everything labeled up here: mixer, FirePod, US 1800, charger, which is for a USB multi-port charger I use. My monitors left and right, so I don't have to reach behind my my studio. I don't have to reach behind my BX5As to turn them on and off individually. I can switch those on here. And my headphones amp. I have a headphone 4-way distribution amp that I bought for something completely unrelated, but I ended up using it for this. Like I mentioned before, I have a pair of studio monitors. They're not the best studio monitors in the world, but they do work pretty well. BX5As, they're good. They seem to be pretty flat. The only problem is they don't have a lot of low end, a lot of bass handling, so I do wish I had a sub. A lot of times when I'm mixing, it's a absolute guessing game how much bass to pull out of the kick drum, because if I don't do anything, it's always too much. And then when I play it back on television or something, on something that has good sound, you know, when I play it back on a system with a subwoofer, there's always too much bass in the kick drum. So I do have to guess how much to roll out of that, but so far so good. I will maybe get a subwoofer one day, but again, space is an issue in here. Nothing of consequence underneath my monitor. I use the Korg Nano Control 2. This is absolutely optional. There's no reason that you would have to have this to do anything that I do. I am kind of old school in that I like to have my fingers on the faders. I like to be able to feel how much I'm turning something up or down rather than clicking and dragging with a mouse. Some of my earlier videos I did without it. My more recent videos I've done with it. I doubt that there's any noticeable difference in the quality that would be attributable to that, but nothing else really amazing going on my desk. It's basic stuff, just a Logitech keyboard and mouse. My computer is hiding down there. It is not anything amazing. Well, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Anyways, it is a Dell Precision, what does it say, T3500. This is a several years old industrial workstation with dust bunnies in it. Last thing I forgot to mention, if you notice next to my module over here, I've got an old cell phone that I don't use anymore. This is just my MP3 player. I keep a power cord plugged into it and keep it plugged into an outlet to keep it charged because the battery's crap. And I keep a line out plugged into the line input on the back of the module, and I can control it, the level with the aux in here. I keep the volume on the phone itself turned all the way up, and I just copy the songs I'm going to be practicing or recording onto that, play them back through the module, and then I listen to it as I record. I forgot to mention headphones. I actually use two different pair. This is a pair of Audio-Technica ATH M2X. It says digital monitors. The sound quality is fine. I don't use them for the sound quality though. I actually use them because they get louder than my other pair. I guess it has to do with the impedance. At the same volume from the module, that pair gets slightly louder, and so I use them. My other pair, if you saw them hanging down here earlier, I have a pair of AKG K240s. Yeah, AKG K240 semi-open back studio monitors. They're just headphones. They work really well. If I'm just sitting at my computer listening to music, playing a game, doing something like that, I use those. And I do my kind of beginning mixes with those. I will sit down, especially if I'm having to adjust the speed of the playback of a track, and I'll talk about that some. Sometimes if you're using if you're using drumless tracks that you found online and you're playing it back to MP3 from a song that you own, if you record along with the original song and then try to lay the drumless track in on top of it, which is what I do, you will often find that that drumless track plays back a hair slower or a hair faster, so they'll line up at the beginning and then not line up at the end. And for adjusting that, I will use headphones because I split the 2-track stereo and line them up that way. But anyways, I do my basic mixing with them. A lot of times the mix is pretty good, but then when I go back and listen to it in my monitors, I find other things that need to be tweaked, and I'll adjust accordingly from there. So how do I actually do the recording? Well, go back here and look behind the module. You see I got a ton of plugs back there. There's individual line outs for most of the drums. There's a group left-right out for the toms and a left-right group out for the cymbals. Everything else has its own individual output. And if I can get down under there, you'll see that I have a snake. Actually, I think it's a 20-foot snake that I bought that has 1/4-inch TRS on this end. It runs down along the wall behind that cabinet, behind my desk, behind everything else, and comes out in the gap right here. Now, the FirePod, it's XLR on this end, and I do need to explain. The FirePod actually has 1/4-inch inputs on it, and when I was shopping, as much as I'd like to say that I bought the XLR on purpose and there was a good reason for it, I'm just an idiot. I really should have bought 1/4-inch on both ends because I have 1/4-inch inputs on this. That 1/4-inch input is a balanced line level signal, and as a general rule, it's not a great idea to plug line level signals into a microphone output. The problem with this being XLR is that when I plug in the XLRs, instead of bypassing mic preamps, now I'm amplifying a already line level signal. It can change things, it can screw things up, it can mess with the tone at least, and it can cause you to run into more clipping problems and things like that. Again, I wish I had a good excuse for doing it. I just wasn't thinking. And I actually considered, as soon as I got it, the plug's over here, and I went to plug them in, I thought, oh man, I'm an idiot. What did I do? And I almost packed it up and sent it back, and then I said, well, I'll just try it anyways. You can see that I do have to keep my preamp levels turned pretty far down, but it actually worked out. It sounds okay. I haven't had any trouble with it yet. I don't know if that means that there's a weak line output signal coming from the strike module, or if maybe there's something about the FP10 where it handles the line level signals on the preamped inputs just really cleanly, but I haven't had any problems from it, so I'm going to keep on doing it. Again, if you were doing this, especially if you had this module or something with 1/4-inch inputs, you're better off with something that's TRS on both ends of the snake rather than TRS to XLR. I really just wasn't thinking. Anyway, so sound comes out of the module, goes through the outputs, comes into the inputs here. This sends audio out through a FireWire cable back behind everything into the back of my computer. And then I record everything in Reaper. Right, so there's Reaper open. You'll see it's got a video on the bottom right hand corner. Reaper, I only use it for audio. It will let you record video as well, and you're supposed to be able to do some video editing with it. I haven't had good luck with it yet. I still use another application for my video editing, but I do use Reaper for my audio. So what I've done is, if I close this out, and I'll do more of this. Actually, I'll just open a new one. So I open a new file, start a new project. I'll do more of this with a screen projection in a little bit. The first thing I did, I go to my tracks and I insert tracks from template, and I have a template made drum cover tracks. So I click on that, it pops open cymbals, toms, ride, hat, snare, which you'll see I've already got labeled down here, right? Cymbals, toms, ride, hat, snare. You'll see, if you can tell in the light, the record buttons are already activated on all the tracks because that's how I saved it in Reaper. So all my tracks are there, everything's ready to go. And I just have to make sure now that in my options I have set the correct module. Right, so there it is. So I would click on FirePod, right, and it knows my first input is input 1, my last is actually input 10. It goes through 8. I'm not actually using my SPDIF inputs, but it does list them there anyway. So the first is 1, last one is 10. Output range doesn't really matter, and I say okay. And then I would have to go and actually start tapping on the drums and making sure that I'm getting some levels down here. I have forgotten to switch some things around and ended up spending an hour or so playing just to have blank tracks when I got done, and that sucks. It's another good point, I guess. You should make a list. If you're going to do this regularly, you should make a list of everything that you need to do before you start recording. In my case, I have to switch the inputs on my module. Clean stuff. Yeah, see that feather duster? One of my videos got a great shot of a camera just right up, just showing nothing but the dust that was built up on my rack the whole time, and it was really terrible. So since then, I went and bought a feather duster, and before I start recording anything, I will dust everything that's in the view of the camera just to be sure. Cleaning your camera lenses. It's a good idea to get your one of these microfiber cloths and actually wipe off the lenses of the cameras. So anyways, I'll record the audio in Reaper, and then when I'm done, I'll chop it up, edit it, make it sound how I want it, and then I go into the video editing part. So what I will do, I know my song, I'm ready to play it, I'm ready to record it, right? So I've got it all queued up, it's ready to go, got my set ready to go, I've dusted everything, I've cleaned everything, I've taken out my cameras, charged the batteries in all of them, gotten everything off of the flash drive so that I know I've got plenty of space, because sometimes I'll just sit and play the same song over and over until I get a good take. I don't want to run out of battery in the middle of it. Set the cameras up, get them into position. I will plug everything in here, turn on Reaper, get my tracks set up, make sure I've got the right settings set, the right input so that it records from the module that I want it to, which might not be a problem for you. I will hit the drums a few times and look at it and make sure that I'm getting good levels and not peaking on anything. Basically not going into the red. Now, I will say this though, if you're recording with Reaper, if you're recording with anything, you got a master and then you got your individual tracks. You want to make sure you don't peak on your individual tracks. Sometimes if you actually play through a song, you hit the crash cymbal or snare and bass drum or something all at the same time, you might peak in the master. That's actually okay, because you're going to mix that and get that down. You just don't want, if you get a peak in any individual track, you're getting distortion, and you can't undistort it once it's distorted. So you do want to make sure that you're not peaking. If while you're recording, it is also monitoring. If while you're recording, it's also playing back through your monitors or through your headphones, you either want to, you do want to make sure you're not peaking in the master at that point. If you're peaking in the master, then that could be a problem, because you're going to be distorting your speakers. So it's not a bad idea to turn off your monitors, unplug your monitors, whatever you have to do, turn off your headphones, so you're not forcing a lot of high-end distorted signal through those. If you're peaking anywhere, that's where you go back to the module and you start adjusting your levels down a little bit, because you're getting too hot of a signal. Optionally, you can go into the module, go to the drum that's peaking, and adjust the level down from there. Sometimes I've done it that way just out of convenience. Once you've got everything set up, I'll come in here and hit record. I'll go over there, tap the drums a couple of times, look back, make sure that it's actually putting the waveform on the screen. I just let it record for the whole time. Make sure you have plenty of hard drive space. You don't want to run out of space in the middle of your recording. Then I will go around and start turning on cameras. I will have already turned them on, got them into position, set them up, looked at the screen, make sure it's focused on what I want, which I have to do individually. I'll have to come over here and look at this, get around to the back side of this camera, right, and turn it on, and then tilt it and adjust it to where it sees what I want it to see. But I won't start it recording yet. Once I've got all of them focused where I want them to be, or at least the two sides and the kit camera, then I will sit down at the kit, get out my phone, connect it to the overhead camera. There it is. I will connect to the overhead camera and then see what it sees. And if I have to, from where I am, I will pull this stand around or tilt it or twist the camera, do whatever I need to get it focused where I want it. Once I've got it lined up, I go ahead and hit record on that camera. Then I get up and I go back to my side cameras and my kit camera, and I start them recording as well. Now, I'm already recording audio. Now I'm recording video. Now I'm ready to play my song. throw my headphones on, start my track, make sure I've got the kit that I want set up in the module, and then just go for it. Once I'm done, once I'm comfortable with everything that I've recorded, and I think I've got everything down good enough, it's never going to be perfect, but once I've got it good enough, then I will, first thing, the most important thing, is I will come over here and hit stop on the recording, and I will, before anything else, save it. File, save as, whatever. Save that recording. Don't close it out yet, but do save it. Save it early and save often. Then I will go around and I will start hitting power buttons, or actually I'll start hitting stop buttons on all the cameras and just pop the cameras off and bring them over and lay them on my desk. Once I'll have all the cameras out and over here just laid on the desk, and one at a time I'll start plugging the cameras into my USB hub, and I will start copying those files. I'll usually make a file folder for the project that I'm working on. The way the GoPros work, they're only going to record a certain length of time, and then it's going to automatically stop that recording and start another one. Now they're seamless. But you will, if you play for say 30 minutes, you'll probably end up with 5 or 6 different video files on there. Just copy them all over. When you go into video editing, you can just bring all 5 of those in and stick them end to end, and it'll play through seamlessly. It doesn't leave any gaps or anything like that. Usually, while that's copying, I'll go ahead and start looking at editing my audio. So I'm going to try to find a track that I've already worked on and pull up the old audio and change this camera setup and see if I can show you the way that I go through that.